What the so-called black Hebrew Israelites have done with Deuteronomy 28 is looked through the curses and found that some things that happened to their people in the past are similar to the curses in Deuteronomy 28. But they are only acknowledging their history that they are very familiar with and should be, because it's American history and it's all taught in American schools. But they are not acknowledging the history of the Roman siege and the fulfillment of some of these curses in Israel in the Old Testament. They are not really familiar with Jewish history besides the history that's popular in America in modern times, like the Holocaust. What I'm going to do in this video is show how some of these curses would come upon the Israelites in Israel after breaking God's covenant and weaken them to where they was overtaken by the Roman Empire and expelled in the Roman siege. You so-called black Hebrew Israelites must have overlooked verses of Deuteronomy 28 where it refers to the Israelites' land. What was the Israelites' land? Israel. Where it says your land, your towns, the fruit of your land. After getting expelled from Israel, the Israelites would not have a land of their own. Deuteronomy 28:15. But if you will not obey the voice of the Lord your God, being watchful to do all his commandments and statutes, which I command you this day, then all these curses shall come upon you and overtake you. Some of these curses came upon the Israelites in Israel and weakened them. Then they was overtaken by the Roman Empire in the Roman siege. Like Deuteronomy 28:24, the Lord shall make the rain of your land, talking about Israel, powdered soil and dust. From the heavens it shall come down upon you until you are destroyed. A fulfillment of this is in Lamentations 4:5. They that did feed delicately are desolate in the streets. They that were brought up in scarlet embrace dug hills. Okay? Dug hills, powdered soil, and dust. That verse matches up with the data history of the Roman siege. In the siege of Jerusalem, hunger became so great that many tried to escape the walls and forage for food. It also matches up with Deuteronomy 28:18. Cursed shall be the fruit of your body, of your land, Israel, of the increase of your cattle, and the young of your sheep. Deuteronomy 28:26. And your dead body shall be food for all the birds of the air, and the beasts of the earth, and there shall be no one there to frighten them away. This verse, Deuteronomy 28:26, matches up with the Roman siege. In the siege of Jerusalem, hunger became so great that many tried to escape the walls and forage for food. 500 or more were captured and sacrificed daily. Like Deuteronomy 28:38. You shall carry much seed out into the field, and shall gather little in, for the locust shall consume it. This was fulfilled in Haggai 1:6, King James Version. Ye have sown much, and bring little in, ye eat, but ye have not enough. Ye drank, but ye are not filled with drink. You clothe you, but there is none warm. And he that earn wages earn wages to put it into a bag with holes. Deuteronomy 28:41. You shall beget sons and daughters, but shall not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity. This was fulfilled in Lamentations 1:5. Lamentations 1:5. Her adversaries are the chief, her enemies prosper, for the Lord hath afflicted her for the multitude of her transgressions. Her children are gone into captivity before the enemy. Now I'm going to go into the Roman siege in Deuteronomy 28. Deuteronomy 28:48. Therefore you shall serve your enemies, whom the Lord shall send against you, in hunger and in thirst. The Roman siege says, in the siege of Jerusalem, hunger became so great that many tried to escape the walls and forage for food. 500 or more were captured and sacrificed daily. The rest of Deuteronomy 28:48 says, in nakedness and in want of all things, and he will put a yoke of iron upon your neck until he has destroyed you. Okay, 500 or more were captured and sacrificed daily. You need to take that destroyed part literally, because it's no joke and neither is God. The soldiers out of rage and hatred amused themselves by nailing their prisoners in different postures, and so great that their numbers that space could not be found for the crosses nor crosses for the bodies. The Roman Empire was 10 times more vicious than white Americans. But even though the really powerful Roman Empire had rule over Egypt in this time of the siege of 70 AD, the so-called black Hebrew Israelites claimed something like, the Israelites fled like cowards, skipping away all the way to Egypt that the Roman Empire had rule over, and made it across or all the way around the Nile River to West Africa. And I guess what? The Roman Empire just turned around and went back home, didn't pursue them. With no history or credible proof of that. Okay, Deuteronomy 28:49. The Lord will bring a nation against you from afar, from the end of the earth. Some of you so-called black Hebrew Israelites may be dumb enough to look at a map, some maps, and not understand that the map is flat and the world is round, and the map is the world taken out and laid flat. There's a big ocean between Europe and Africa, that side of the world, and the Americas. The Americas is actually closer to Asia and actually on that side of the world. The Roman Empire had rule over the nations around the Mediterranean Sea. It was all part of the Roman Empire in 70 AD. They came from the end of the world, from that end. Okay, Deuteronomy 28:50. A nation of unyielding countenance, who will not regard the person of the old or show favor to the young. This fits the Roman Empire of that time a lot more than it has ever fitted America. Deuteronomy 28:51. And shall eat the fruit of your cattle and the fruit of your ground until you are destroyed, who also shall not leave you grain, new wine, oil, the increase of your cattle, or the young of your sheep, until they have caused you to perish. I mean, y'all are not taking the destroyed part literally. This matches the Roman siege, where the Roman Empire was starving the Jews to death and sacrificing the ones that tried to escape the walls. The Roman siege says, after the conquest, the Jews still living in Judah were continuously subjugated and humiliated by the Romans. The Romans continued to collect the temple tax from the Jews, even though their temple had been completely destroyed. So the Romans took the temple tax and used it to support their pagan temples. Deuteronomy 28:52. They shall precede you in all your towns into your high and fulfilled walls in which you trusted, come down throughout all your land, and they shall precede you in all your towns throughout all your land which the Lord your God has given you. The land the Lord their God gave them was Israel. The Roman C says, after some years of this, the Jews of Judah rebelled against the Romans again in 132 AD, with a man named Bar Kochaba, I can't pronounce his name, leading the fight. He was proclaimed Messiah by the rabbis who supported the revolt. But after Bar Kochaba's rebellions, Rome finally and utterly destroyed the Jewish population of Judah. Now remember, Deuteronomy 28:52 says, they shall precede you in all your towns into your high and fulfilled walls in which you trusted, come down throughout all your land, and they shall precede you in all your towns throughout all your land which the Lord your God has given you. The Roman siege continues to say that Joshua said that as a result of the many battles, the once beautiful land was destroyed, and that it cannot be recognized. Deuteronomy 28:53 was fulfilled in 2 Kings 6 verse 24 through 29 versus Deuteronomy 28:49 to Deuteronomy 28:68 is virtually about the siege. Okay, listen to this. Deuteronomy 28:55. So that he will not give to any of them any of the flesh of his children which he is eaten, because he has nothing left to him in the siege. It directly refers to the siege. And in the distress which your enemies shall distress you in all your towns. Okay, let's go down to Deuteronomy 28:61. Also, every sickness and every affliction which is not written in this book of the law, the Lord will bring upon you until you are destroyed. I mean, you guys are not taking this destroyed part throughout these verses literally. Deuteronomy 28:63. And as the Lord rejoiced over you to do you good and to multiply you, so the Lord will rejoice to bring you ruin upon you and to destroy you, and you shall be plucked from the land into which you go to possess. The Jews, after they have been forced out of over 109 nations and cities, they was forced out of the nation that they was in before going into Germany in the Holocaust because of famine and drought. I'm not going into great detail with everything. Okay, Deuteronomy 28:64. And the Lord shall scatter you among all peoples, from one end of the earth to the other. The Jews have history in over 50 nations, some in every continent, throughout Europe, North Africa, East Africa, throughout the Middle East, Russia, China, Japan, India, the Americas. I mean, that is what you call scattered among all peoples from one end of the earth to the other. Not one end, not just the Americas, okay? I have a video where I debunked the so-called Black Hebrew Israelites on Deuteronomy 28:68. But I'm going to do that here. They claim that the Bible calls Egypt the house of bondage, but it does not call Egypt the house of bondage anywhere. And I'll prove that. Deuteronomy 13:10 does not call Egypt the house of bondage. If it was, then it would just say, Egypt the house of bondage. But it does not. It says, brought thee out of the land of Egypt. Then, comma, from the house of bondage. It's referring to them as two different things with two different Hebrew words used for Egypt and bondage in the Hebrew Bible. The house of bondage was inside Egypt. That's truth and logic. It's referring to the house of bondage inside Egypt, not calling it the house of bondage. This is what they have confused. I have more on the subject as I do with everything. Timeline: Roman Empire, 70 AD. Tito destroys Jerusalem, and Jews spread in Armenia, Iraq, Iran, Arabia, Egypt, Italy, Spain, and Greece. All these nations, Armenia, Arabia, Egypt, Italy, Spain, and Greece, was all a part of the Roman Empire in 70 AD. In the history of the siege, it says the Roman Empire shipped and sold Jews throughout the empire around the Mediterranean Sea. They had a fleet. This indicates the Jews were spread to Armenia, Arabia, Egypt, Italy, Spain, and Greece by ships. Egypt is referring to the land of Egypt in Deuteronomy 28:68, as God called it in the Bible. The Roman siege says this: the promise of Deuteronomy 28:68 was triumphantly fulfilled. You shall be offered for sale to your enemies as male and female slaves, but no man shall buy you. This happened as too many Jewish slaves guttered the Egypt slave market, and no one could buy all the available slaves. It was estimated 80,000 Jews in Egypt in 1922. Then you have Jews in Ethiopia and Libya, places close to Egypt. So there you have it. The curses of Deuteronomy 28 would come upon the Israelites in Israel after breaking God's covenant and weaken and overtake them until they was destroyed, but not virtually destroyed. In verses Deuteronomy 28:49 to Deuteronomy 28:68 is about the Roman wars, the Roman siege, and the capture of the Israelites by the Roman Empire and shipping them throughout the empire, including Egypt. Feel free to watch more videos, leave comments, talk over the subject, but do not attack me personally or my race by leaving negative comments, or they will be removed and I will block you. Stick to the subject, please. Peace.